Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode, known as Sport Mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the second race of what has been reclassified as the 2020 Manufacturer Series Exhibition due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This was a Group 4 race held at the Suzuka circuit. With that, let's get racing. Taking a look at the grid then, you'll see that I've qualified 5th with a 2-minute 10.1. My story for qualifying was a rather exceptional one in that I beat my target time by 0.9 seconds and my personal best by 0.6 seconds, this all being due to the fact that coming out of Spoon Curve, so turns 13 and 14, I ended up picking up the excessive slipstream of an SLS down the back straight going into 130R, so turn 15. And this was because the SLS, who was 5 seconds up the road when I went into my qualifying lap, had a terrible time going through turns 13 and 14. As they went onto the back straight, they decided to finish their lap because they hadn't put in a qualifying lap at that point, and I was right on their backside picking up the tow all the way to the finish line. So I originally set my sights on qualifying in the top 10, but to be close to the podium now, I've raised my bar in terms of my target race result from a top 10 finish to a podium. So coming on to the race strategy, this was an 11 lap race with 2 potential strategies available based on the fact that you had the racing medium and hard tyres available, of which you had to use the hard compound at some point in the race for at least 1 lap. There's the no stop strategy, which some would be doing the entire race on the hard tyre, or there'd be the one stop strategy where you do a number of laps on the medium tyre and then switch to the hard for the final stint of the race. Due to the very good tyre wear on the Renault Megane, I would be doing 10 laps on the medium and then coming into the pits at the end of lap number 10 to do 1 lap on the hard to conclude the race. And my car could do this, as I say, because it was very strong on tyre wear, whereas other cars would need to pit between laps 6 and 9 to switch onto the hard tyre because the medium would have worn off by then, including for example the Honda NSX and Audi TT in front of me. Now, no fuel saving would be required during this race. The fuel multiplier was good enough so that pretty much everybody could do the entire race with fuel to spare. So this would be a race about tyre management and picking the right time to come into the pits if you were going for the one stop. Coming to the end of this 20 car grid then, all of us being A driver rating, you'll note that we've been burning off some fuel whilst we've been on the start grid. And we're about to get underway with the typical rolling start. My target for the first lap will be just to stick behind the lead 4 cars and see if we can gradually pull away from the rest of the field. However, as we're going to see, things are not all as they seem as we go into lap number 1, but no spoilers. So coming out of the final corner here, onto the start-finish straight, then to commence the race in 3, 2, 1, and we're underway. Now, tucking in behind the Mercedes in front, a very strong car in a straight line. I can use them to pull me along, and what with there being a Nissan GTR behind me in 6th with a very high top end speed, I'm grateful for the tow of the Mercedes in front, and that the GTR is spending a bit of time warming up their tyres behind rather than focusing on trying to bear down on me into turns 1 and 2. The 2 corners on this circuit that I really struggle with, Suzuka not being a personal favourite circuit of mine, it's a brilliant one for me to watch racing at, but I really struggle racing on the circuit due to the combination of corners and sectors. Now, fortunately in sector 1 here you see we're going to close up very close behind the Mercedes in front, and this immediately alerted me to the fact that potentially the Mercedes in front is running a no-stop. They've started the race on the hards due to their lack of pace compared to the TT in front, so I decided here to get as close as possible coming out to turn 7, tuck it up the inside, and as we go around here into the 2 Degner corners, so Degner curve being turn 8, or Degner 1 as it's now known, we've got past the Mercedes and we're up into 4th place, and now we're going to be bearing down on the Audi TT in 3rd. We can see in our rear view mirror that the Mercedes has fallen back a little bit, going perhaps a little bit defensive against the Nissan GTR coming up from 6th, but on top of that the difference between the tyres is quite clear and they're falling off at the main pace at this point in the race. Now coming into the hairpin for the first time, so turn 11, we're not going to put too much pressure on the guys in front at this point because I was having a bit of difficulty getting the medium tyre warmed up compared to others, or at least feeling comfortable on the tyre. Something I have practiced a lot, but I'm finding that when I go into the race itself, I'm sometimes having a bit of difficulty getting used to the tyre, and add into the top of that the fact that I'm running in the slipstream of the guys in front. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually gradually falling back from the guys in front, getting out of the 1.5 second slipstream window or right on the edge of it, and then using the back straight here and the slipstream to pull me a bit closer to the guys in front. Because remember, it's an 11 lap race, we're not going to win or lose it in a single lap, it's all about the long distance target. So things are going to settle down a little bit at this point, and what I was also trying to observe at this point in the race was whether any of the guys in front would be going for the no-stop strategy, but looking at how much they're breaking away from the rest of the field and then I'm acting as an intermediary, no man's land in fourth, these guys all appear to be on the medium tyre and going for the one stop. The guys behind the Mercedes is keeping relatively close at this point in time, but I would expect that due to the fact they're in my slipstream, plus they've got the better straight line speed, and it's the same with the Nissan GTR who's all over the back of them, but they're going to do a little bit of fighting by the looks of things, and that should mean that those two will start to fall back as we switch to the replay camera for this portion of the race. Now we've gone to the replay camera just to give you an idea of the overall flow of the circuit and how the Renault Megane was going around the circuit. I must admit, I do like this Group 4 car. It's a very powerful car for cornering circuits. One of the difficulties, which I've already expressed a number of times, is the lack of top end speed in this car, and it's very noticeable when you're going down the back straight at Suzuka. In fact, it's a very long straight going into a high speed left-hander, i.e. 130R or turn 15, and you really do start to lose out there, and you lose out to an extent as well when you're going onto the start-finish straight to begin the next lap. However, through sector 1 here, which concludes with the S-curves, so that's turns 3 through to 7, and then going into sector 2, which is all the way from turn 7 through to the hairpin at turn 11, that's where the Megane really shone here. When you went into the latter sectors of the circuit, so sectors 3 and 4 when you're heading up towards Spoon Curve and then coming to 130R and the Casio Triangle chicane, that's where this car fell off a little bit in the pace compared to other cars such as the Audi TT in front of me. A very powerful car on the straights thanks to its very good torque in gears 3 and 4. Now going through the hairpin for the second time of asking here, we can see that the NSX in second place is starting to fall off at the back of the Porsche in first place. Now, it should be noted that the Porsche that qualified on pole had exceptional pace here, and you're going to see over the course of the next couple of laps that they effectively break away from the rest of the pack. This was their race to win, and they did a fantastic job. However, I noticed very quickly that the NSX was struggling in second place and the TT was all over the back of them, and what I was thinking at this point was, okay, these two are going to be fighting, the TT is going to be very strong in the slipstream of the NSX going down the back straight here to 130R, and I can use this to start to get closer and start attacking for third and second. Now I'm not going to be doing anything crazy in terms of really pushing the car to its extreme, so I need to make the tyres last for 10 laps so that way I can just do the one lap on the hards. Not that I had any issues with the hards, but I found that the medium tyre was much more comfortable even when it had excessive wear put into it, by comparison with other potential competitors at this circuit. Now by that comparison, the Audi TT in front of me was the car that I wanted to keep an eye on, because the Audi TT would burn through its front tyres very quickly, with it being a front engine front wheel drive car, and the tyre wear on those types of cars in Group 4 at the moment is extreme to say the least. So what I was expecting is that by about lap 5, the Audi TT would really start to fall off of the pace on the medium tyre and would be using the NSX as a means of trying to combat against that, i.e. using the slipstream, but in return it looks as though the NSX is struggling themselves, even though their tyre wear is not as severe as the Audi, and that means that these two are going to be right for the pickings as we go deeper and deeper into this first stint of the race. So for now, getting a little bit closer, you can see that gap has started to contract. However, I'm not pushing the car too hard, I just want to manage these tyres, manage the car sensibly, get into a flow of the circuit. And that's the one thing about Suzuka I found. Once you got into that flow and rhythm of the circuit, particularly sectors 1 and 2, that's where the time really was. In terms of, if you could nail those two sectors down, then the rest of your lap would be good, and you could keep up against the best competitors here, albeit apart from the Porsche that's running off in first place, as you can see there in the background of the shot. Now as we're coming up to the hairpin for the third time of asking, so going into turn 10, the little dinky right-hander, followed by the left-hand hairpin, you can see that Porsche is starting to open that gap. That gap's about 3 seconds now. The NSX has really fallen off there, and the TT's fallen back a little bit, and then there's the cluster of cars behind, being led by the Mercedes SLS on the hard tyre in 5th place, who's doing an exceptional job at the moment of holding everybody up. Perhaps everybody behind them thinks they're on the medium and struggling. Turns out that's probably going to work to their disadvantage. And as we're going into the Spoon Curve for the third time, you can see we get a nice run through Spoon Curve here, and we are getting close to that TT. However, watch what happens as we go on the back straight here. How that gap does not close up anymore, it gets neutralised. So switch to the onboard here. And you can see that despite the fact I'm in the slipstream of the TT and I'm close behind, they're in the slipstream of the Honda NSX, and just their raw engine power within gears 3 and 4 is just enabling them to pull away. But to be fair, the gap between myself and the guys behind has opened up to 4 seconds thanks to the fact I'm running the slipstream, as the Honda NSX gets it wide going through 130R, has to take to the escape road there and rejoins the circuit safely, but because they've got dirt on their tyres, they go all over the place, all over the Casio Triangle chicane, and now the TT is really going to try and make a move around the outside here as we come onto the start-finish straight to begin lap number 4. The NSX takes the inside, the TT's using its engine power to go around on the outside, and the NSX tucks in. But look how close I am now to the back of these two guys, and I'm thinking about a potential move coming up on this lap. Now going into turn 1 for the 4th time of asking here, and you can see how the guys in front are pulling away. It was one of my issues was the fact that nailing the braking point for turn 1 and trail braking into that corner was something I felt very afraid of, particularly in any type of car. Less so in Group 4 cars due to the fact they're much slower compared to Group 3 and Group 2 cars, but still it wasn't a corner I was comfortable with, and that braking point I had to do safely, whereas a number of other drivers could do it more aggressively, hence why the gap opened up. But as we're going through the S-curves here, you can see how close we're getting to the back of these guys in front, due to the fact we've just got that natural grip in the car and the medium tyre working to compound that effect, and we're all over the back of the Honda here as we go into the Degner curves. And into Degner 1 very shortly, braking just before the 50 board in 4th gear, and we're going to be shifting down to 3rd for Degner 2. We can see that the Honda pushed it there and pulled a little bit of a gap open, and now we're coming out onto turn number 10 very shortly and in the hairpin, and here being close behind the Honda, I decide, am I going to go for a move? Yeah, I'm going to go for a very late lunge, and this was unfair on my part, and I did push the Honda wide to gain the place, so I'm going to pull over to the side of the road here and let the Honda get past, let them get up to speed, and we're going to be racing once again. The reason I wanted to give that back because that was an unfair pass. I pushed the Honda wide in order to make the move. It was a late lunge by myself, and the only way that would have worked is if the Honda had looked in their radar at their rearview mirror and noticed that I was coming down on the inside and moved out of the way specifically to avoid an accident. If I affected it in a real world race, would have caused an accident and probably taken us both out of the race, or at least crippled us both back to the pits, so that's why I wanted to give the place back. Fair racing comes first and foremost in my mind. So, with that incident out of the way, one I'll learn from, we're racing again. What I have done by doing that, however, is I've caused the Honda to fall out of the slipstream zone of the TT in front. Well, they're right on the edge of it now, and they're going to be falling out of it shortly. But we can see that the Honda is really struggling for pace as they go wide again at 130R here, and they go charging into the Casio Triangle chicane, and they get it reasonably good at first, but then they go wide coming out the second part of the chicane here, and that sends them off the circuit, enables us to pick up a place, and they rejoin the circuit, but then they get reset behind everybody who's just come through the chicane. So that was very unfortunate on their end. And with that in mind, we're now chasing after the Audi TT for 2nd place at this point in the race, as we go on to lap number 5. Now the gap opened up to 2.2 seconds from the TT at the moment, a little bit to 2.3, but then coming around turn number 2 here, it's going to start to close up. We're going to again see the raw strength of the Renault Megane here, the Renault Megane Tourer. There's the 2 Meganes for the Renault Group 4 category. We're using the touring car rather than the front-wheel drive front engine car. Now for the S-curves, we close up very quickly, and that's because the front tyres on that Audi TT are starting to feel the pain of the tyre wear multiplier here, and the fact they are naturally worn out much quicker according to the way the car's modelled compared to our own, with our car being a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car if I remember correctly. So we come out of the S-curves and we've already closed the gap by half a second, if not a little bit more. And going into the Degner curves at this point, we see they get it wide there. That's going to cost them some time, albeit not too much because they're able to use the runoff strip there, the artificial grass, in order to stabilise the car, but they do lose half a second in total, whereas they could have gone to the gravel and completely lost it altogether. We come up to the hairpin for the 5th time of asking, and we're closing very nicely at this point. But now as we go onto the more extended sectors of the circuit, so sectors 3 and 4, watch how the TT's engine power enables them to just hold me off for the time being. In that as we're coming along here, going round 200R if I remember correctly, so this is turn 12, and then into turns 13 and 14, so spoon curve, we can see that the TT's just able to stay away from us, albeit they are going a little bit deep into turn 13, and then that compromises their line to an extent into turn 14, but they nail it reasonably. We're very close behind them here, so we go out to the left hand side for a potential move, but now as it's a drag race down to 130R, sorry Renault, we're not going to be catching that TT anytime soon. We're going to have to tuck back in on that slipstream as they're still pulling away at this point. And going into 130R here, I'm going to lift slightly just because I'm in the slipstream of the car in front, so dirty air means I've got less downforce to take the corner. All over the back of the TT once again, I'm looking to go to the inside to make a late braking move, but they brake at the same time as myself, so they're able to hold on to the position. Also trying to throw them out a little bit, perhaps compromise their line coming through the chicane to wrap up the lap, but they nail it spot on here. Good work by the TT driver. Now we're going to the start-finish straight to commence lap number 6. And once again, you can see the TT's power enables them to just keep us behind, so we're just going to stay on the slipstream for the time being and use that to pull us along, pull us away from the guys behind in the chasing pack. So it's working to our mutual advantage at this point. What I decided to do here is actually brake a bit harsher going into turn 1 and then enable myself to carry some more speed by taking an early apex into turn 2, and that means I'm all over the back of the TT at this point, and going through the S-curves it's very difficult to make a move here, but this is putting a lot of pressure on the TT driver in front, or that's my intention, because I'm all over the back of them like a nasty little wasp, in the fact that I want to get past, and I'm just constantly nipping at their heels here to try and get through. And I'm going to try and use the same move I used on the Mercedes on lap number 1, tuck into the inside of turn 7 here, but I get my attack time just a little bit too early there, and as a result I bump into the back of the TT, which gives them a little boost, but that works to our advantage. It helps us both pull away from the pack once more. Again, just timed that one a little bit incorrectly there, no harm done, as we're now chasing them, going through Degner 2 here. We both nail it reasonably well, albeit the TT gets a bit wide and goes out onto the artificial grass, and they do something unexpected at turn 10 here, which is they actually back out of it. Now, upon reflection, I immediately thought to myself, I know exactly why the TT driver's done that, and it's very sensible driving by them, as we switch to the replay camera for this segment of the race. The TT driver, most likely in my opinion, recognised the fact that I was constantly going to be all over the back of them for the rest of this lap and probably for the next few laps, and in the end I would eventually get past. I'd have to force my way past if needs be, either they would be driving defensively or heavily on the defence. So what the TT driver has done is backed out. Now the reason they've done that is so that way they avoid fighting us, so they avoid losing any time. But also, remember one of the things I've said time and time again, that TT is hilariously fast down the straights compared to my own car. So as a result, what that means is, if they're riding the slipstream of my own car down the straights, they're able to close up very tight to the back of me, and you're seeing it here as we go into 130R. But in return, as we go through the cornering sectors, so sectors 1 and 2, they'll fall back a bit, but not enough probably to fall out the slipstream of my own car. Alternatively, they can use their natural straight line speed to close up as we go into sector 3, and then use the slipstream in sector 4 in order to keep close behind my own car, and that means we're both going to continue to pull away from the chasing pack, because the TT is going to be using my slipstream to counteract their weakness in tyre wear and cornering at this point in the race. So it's smart play by them, and we can see in the background we do have another Renault Megane actually chasing us, currently in 4th place. But because the two of us are working together and we haven't compromised one another's time, we are going to continue to pull away from the rest of the chasing field. Now we're on lap number 7 at this point, and things are flowing very nicely. No major incidents to report, everything's going alright. I haven't got any complaints here. It's just a case now of settling down, because we know first place is too far away for us to catch up unless they make a major mistake. So now I'm just focusing on trying to secure second place for the rest of this race, which will be a fantastic result, but to do so we have to keep on pushing. Now not 100%, because doing that will cause us to go into a mistake, because we'll be triggering our mind to think we've got to go faster and faster. Faster and faster. Somebody's taken out the 50 board there going into Degner 1, which didn't really put me up a practice for that in my practice sessions. What if all the braking boards have been eliminated? But we've got to keep on going, because it may be the case that we've got some of those no-stoppers, such as that Mercedes SLS who qualified on 4th originally, who could be still quite high up in the field. They've not been fighting, they've just been using sensible tactics in the slipstream of the guys in front in order to pull themselves along, and they could be a threat in jumping us as we go for our pit stop on lap number 10. And it's at these points in the race as well where that concentration factor really comes in. This is the instance where I'm not looking at a car in front of me. I haven't got a marker in front of me to chase or pursue or focus my mind on. Instead, all I've got is a TT behind me who's never, unless I make a major mistake, is never really going to pose a threat, but is ominously there. And I've got to think about, right, I'm not racing against the guy behind. I'm not racing against the guy 8 or 9 seconds up the road going into 130R at the moment. Instead, what I'm actually doing, I'm racing against cars that I can't see. And that's a very difficult thing to get used to, but that's what I love about these longer races where you've got multiple strategies and all the different cars in the Manufacturer Series, is the fact that you haven't just got to think about the guys close around you, but you've also got to think about the cars that are further down the field or further up the field and what they are doing as well in terms of their end-to-end strategy. And we've got a lot of Group 4 races throughout this exhibition season, this exhibition stage of the season I should say, where you've got multiple strategies that could come into effect. But now we're on lap number 8 here, nothing major to report. Talking a little bit about the Renault Megane here. Very strong car in terms of handling, as we've noticed already, and also on tyre wear and fuel consumption. Obviously the downside to this car, while it lacking that overall top end speed, means that this car is going to be vulnerable on a lot of circuits where there are much longer straights or continuous straights, such as Monza, which is coming up later on in this stage of the season. It's going to be quite an interesting race, I can assure you of that. Otherwise, at Suzuka, a circuit which, as I say, I'm not very comfortable with this circuit, but the car does very well here, as we can see. It was a pleasure to drive the car here, and I did feel comfortable on a bogey track in the fact that the car actually seemed to make life a lot easier. If I'd been running in a front engine rear wheel drive car, such as a Jaguar F-Type, then I'd probably be a lot more scathing in terms of my overall feelings towards the circuit. But we know now that the Audi TT, talking about people making mistakes, Audi TT actually lost it there going through Degner 1 into Degner 2. And that's caused them to fall off of the pace of the back of my car. Now they're about 2.5 to 3 seconds behind me. So now I've got nobody in the nearby vicinity. I've got to keep the focus on and keep delivering the consistent lap times. And that's that whole effect of tyre wear coming in on the TT. And they're most likely going to be pitting at the end of this lap because they probably absolutely ravaged the front tyres that they're running with the medium compound. Going into Spoon then for the 8th time of asking here. Just waiting to see how things are going to be developing as we come across the start-finish line. Be keeping an eye on who's pitting and who's not. But at this point, I wasn't really thinking too much about who could potentially leap me beyond a no stop. I was more just focusing on just bring this car home. Because even if somebody leaps you, such as that Mercedes, if they leap me through the pit stops, I'll still be coming home in the 3rd place most likely, and that would be a fantastic result for a track where I expected only to try and get a top 10 result. So going through 130R then, do a little bit of talking more about Suzuka, the bits of the circuit I really enjoy. It would have to be the first 2 sectors because they're flying sectors, they're all about cornering and technicality, and that's something I do love on race circuits when you've got corners which are heavily focused on technical aspects rather than circuits that are focused around speed and high speed corners. Less a fan of those, which will sound rather contradictory because I have picked a manufacturer who does very well in medium to high speed corners. I've also found that both of the Renaults I'm running, so the Megane Tourer here, the Group 4 car, and the RS01, the Group 3 car, they can be very fun in the cornering circuits, even at lower speeds, despite the fact they've got some rather nasty handling characteristics in 1st and 2nd gear. Absolutely loving the cars for what they are, cornering cars. And we're on lap number 9 at this point, so going through the S-curves once again. We can see that behind us, the guys behind are approximately, well, they're not in the camera feed there, so they're going to be at least 6 seconds behind. Now, the pit stop time at this circuit, if I remember correctly, was somewhere in the region of 8 to 9 seconds. You've got to keep in mind that you have to build up speed going back onto the start-finish straight to go into turn 1. So 8 to 9 seconds, that was the window I was trying to open up on everyone behind. So that way, just in case we do have any close by no stoppers, they wouldn't be able to lead me through the pits. We'll have to wait to find out. In terms of the pace advantage of the medium tyre versus the hard tyre, one thing I found was that the medium tyre was consistently faster than the hard tyre if I did 10 laps on the medium. The hard would equate around the 11th lap. Obviously we're not going to be doing 11 laps on the medium, so I will pick up a 20-second penalty at the end of the race. We can see the TT there is holding off the Renault Megane, fighting over 3rd and 4th place at the moment on track. But the hard was not a tyre I wanted to run with because it was natively at the start of the race about 1.5 seconds slower than the medium, and that would gradually start to close as we went deeper and deeper into the medium stint, and by lap 8 it'd be about half a second difference based on the way I was driving the car. Found the hard tyre was a difficult tyre to get used to. It required a lot of work to warm up, and particularly when you've got the most technical part of the circuit as sector 1, running a hard tyre straight away going into that sector can be rather infuriating or difficult. Now going into 130R, for the 9th time of asking, nailing it spot on there. Perhaps not going as heavy on the throttle as we could, i.e. using the full limits of the circuit, but I didn't want to end up running onto the artificial grass there as we saw with the Honda NSX much earlier on in the race, and causing myself to lose time and potentially pick up a penalty or at least dirty tyres for a small section of the circuit. I'm now coming on to lap number 10. Now we're looking over to the right hand side of the screen. You can see the lap times are rather consistent. We've had a couple of instances of jumping excessively into the 2:11s or even the 2:12 on lap number 4. That's because we were fighting. But once we're able to settle down, we can see the natural progression of lap time. We're in the high 2-minute 10s, then gradually starting to push our way into the 2-minute 11s. Pretty much running to target at this point. The guy up in front in the Porsche Cayman is doing a fantastic job. 12 seconds up the road, they're managing their car just as well as our own, and most likely also they're much more comfortable at this circuit, have a native pace advantage in their driving ability, because the Renault Megane, I should say, was rather good here, as already reflected, as was the Porsche Cayman 718. But the Cayman driver is clearly more experienced and has the better overall lap time. And looking at the times to the guys behind, so 3rd place at the moment is 7.1 seconds. We just will try and squeeze that gap a little bit further open if we can, so that way we've got the greatest security from the pit stop. I'm not worried about the guy in 3rd place, because I actually think they're probably at this point using the same strategy as myself, and I know the Porsche in front definitely is based on their pace. It's the guy in 4th I'm worried about, because that's the Mercedes S driver who qualified in front of us and who we got past at the end of turn 7 on lap number 1, because they're definitely going to be on the no-stop strategy. Now I'm thinking here, based on the fact that third place is quite a way up the road, if I look at the mini-map, actually it turns out that fourth place is probably quite close behind them and maybe using the slipstream off the back of them, if I'm reading the mini-map correctly. It's quite hard to tell when two cars are literally running nose to tail. But that was something I was thinking about as well over the course of the race. How has slipstream enabled the nose stoppers to actually continue to pull closer and closer to the front of the field, because the slipstream effect is so strong at the moment? It's actually going to be reduced as of a future update in the middle of April. But enough of that for the time being, that's future predictions. Going through 130R for the 10th time of asking them, and coming to the end of our stint on the medium tyre. We can see that the Porsche's going to the pits now. They've got ample fuel left to finish the race. We'll look at our fuel gauge in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, and you can see we've got ample fuel left as well to do one more lap. Let's get this pit stop now down nice and tightly into the pits, making sure to switch to the medium, and switch to the hard, not the medium. Haven't made that mistake multiple times in practice. Waiting for the car to come in. Alright, let's get those tyres changed over, boys. Alrighty, now have we done enough to be able to come out in second place? Well, no we haven't. It turns out that Mercedes SLS did a fantastic job with the no-stop strategy, and now we've got to try and hunt second down on this final lap. Now of course the one thing you've got to keep in mind here is that whilst the Mercedes does have worn tyres at this point compared to my own, I've got to warm these tyres up and attack them as soon as possible, and the gap at the moment is almost 1.5 seconds as I hit the rev limiter in third gear going through turn number 3 and 4. Now we did that there. Could have used fourth gear, but the downshift and upshift combination would have cost us a bit of time as well, so no major net gain or loss there. And we're trying to get as much speed and pace into these tyres as possible, and we are doing so. We are starting to gradually close up the gap to the Mercedes SLS, although it's winding a little bit coming out of turn 7 because we weren't as smooth through there, but going through Degner 1 and 2, we should be able to close up on the Mercedes a little bit here, as we're naturally stronger, what them being a front engine rear wheel drive car, so their combination is not going to be as potent. But as we come out the corner, we can see the gap is just holding off of 1.1 seconds going into turn 10 and then into the hairpin. We're closing up under braking, but then we're going to need to get a good exit out of this corner to be able to stay close behind. But we don't get the best of exits there. We get a reasonable one comparable to the Mercedes, and we are closing the gap a little bit. But again, the Mercedes is much more powerful in a straight line, and the only way we're starting to inch closer and closer towards them is because of the potency of slipstream. We're not close enough to make a move going into spoon curve, but can we get it smooth through here? Well, not through the first part of the curve, but the second part, going a little bit sideways. The tyres are still quite cold, and now we're onto that back straight. And as we go down towards 130R, we are gradually closing up to that Mercedes. We're now 0.7 seconds away, but it's so painful that we haven't got the speed to get closer and closer at a more rapid rate. And going into 130R here, we can't afford to overdo it into this corner. We're not going to bin it for the sake of trying to chase down a place that's just out of arm's reach at the moment. Will they make a mistake into braking? Can we brake really late into the Casio triangle chicane? Will we brake as late as possible? We try to get as smooth an exit out of here as possible, but the Mercedes driver has just done enough to hold on to second place, and we'll still be grateful for the fact we're coming home in a rather smooth third place. Upon reflection, very pleased with this result, as it was my first podium for Renault Sport. It wasn't as exciting a race as race number 1, but sometimes the race is going to be like that. It's about keeping your head down and just keeping with the strategy and pushing it all the way to the end. Pity we couldn't quite bring it home in second place, but well done to the Mercedes SLS for a fantastic drive in the no-stop strategy. And now we're going to take our success to the Group 3 race at Red Bull Ring on Wednesday the 25th of March. Oh, by the way, that one is in the wet. But until then, I have been TX141. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe for future GT Sport videos on my channel. But until next time, as always, ladies and gentlemen, take care and drive safely.